My name is Rose Amador-Lebeau. I am President and CEO of CTC. Our mission is to help people through employment and education become self-sufficient. We have a day worker center. We have educational programs so people can get their GEDs. We serve a variety of people, people who've just become unemployed, people who have never worked. We work with homeless people. We work with people who have just gotten out of prison and have to re-enter the workforce. So we're full service. I think it's seeing people make the change, become successful, make that transition, and actually having an impact on people's lives, a positive impact. To see these success stories is what it's all about. Hello, I'm Siwa Rose Amador-Lebeau, and this is Native Voice TV. Welcome to the show. I'd like to welcome my co-host, Craig Pasqua.
Yes, hi Rose, how are you?
How's it going?
Oh, wonderful.
We have a wonderful guest today.
We do indeed.
And very interesting. I'd like to welcome Michel.Liu. Welcome, Michael.
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, we were talking before the show, and it's been 8 years since you've done our show.
Yeah,
so you were one of our first guests about first 3 years into the show, so I'm glad to have you back.
I'm glad to be back.
Find out all the things you've been involved in.
And be glad to tell you guys what's going on here.
Right. Yeah. Well, first, let's learn a little bit about you and your position at NASA.
Okay.
We have someone from NASA.
Yeah, I work at the NASA Ames Research Center, and I'm the Director for Safety and Mission Assurance. So what does all that mean?
Well, what does that mean?
My gosh, our group handles making sure that we have things in place to prevent people from getting hurt at work. So, we don't want any injuries or any sort of unplanned mess-ups with equipment or buildings or anything. So we have a staff that helps our safety program in that area. And in the mission assurance piece of the house, we work a lot of our programs and projects that make sure that we're doing things properly, we got proper testing, and that they work properly. So, we do all kinds of things. We do aircraft development, we do robotics, we do small satellites. And so when we make a small satellite or other piece of hardware, we want to make sure it works properly. We also do a lot of software development and all kinds of things. So we want to make sure that when we do that, the bugs are out of the software and things work right. So we help make that happen with overseeing a lot of the work there from a quality perspective.
That must
go ahead.
That must take a lot of training.
We have a really good staff, and so my personal training, I got a degree in astronomy from Berkeley, and so I started out with computer programming and working in some facilities we call the arc jets and the wind tunnels. And arc jets, we do actually what we call thermal testing, which is we develop heat shield and shuttle tile materials, and so there's a way to test them. You heat them up and make sure that they're going to protect the spacecraft when it re-enters the atmosphere. So we have a facility that does that, and then we also have some wind tunnels where we test different airplane designs and modifications, and anything that's flown has been through one of our wind tunnels. So
really,
yeah,
I'm just so fascinated. Someone from NASA. Wow. Now, how did you get there? Have you always wanted to go to work for NASA, or?
In my case, it's true because at my current vintage, if you will, I was growing up when we were first sending humans into space. So we were doing the Mercury program, the Gemini program, then the Apollo program, and then we went after that to the shuttle program, and now we have an orbiting space station laboratory that's international. But when I was growing up, when I was about 5 years old, I said, I want to work for NASA. And at that point, when I was young, I wanted to be an astronaut. So Later on, I said, you know, it's kind of hazardous, so maybe I'll do something a little different. So I got an interest in astronomy, and so I went to Berkeley and got a degree in astronomy. And after I graduated, I got into computer programming, and like I said before, working in the arc jet and the wind tunnels. And then after that, I moved over to safety. So that's what I do now. I'm the head of safety at NASA Ames.
Are there a lot of native astronauts and professionals at NASA?
Well, we have one native astronaut, that was John Harrington. He's since retired from the NASA program, and he's gone to the commercial astronaut side. And so we're very proud of him because he flew on one of the space shuttle missions and did some spacewalks and stuff. It was really neat stuff. And so it was a pleasure meeting John. Met him a couple times, and so it's a thrill to know John as a native astronaut. And then I work with astronauts in my daily job. You know, there's some folks at Ames that are astronauts or former astronauts, and the head of the safety program within NASA is an astronaut, and so is the head of NASA. He's an astronaut. So those folks have flown the space shuttle and participated in space missions. So I get to kind of rub shoulders with astronauts, even though I'm not one myself. But you know, it's neat working with people that have been in space. So.
Do you work with Native youth that are aspiring to be astronauts or be in your type of business?
Absolutely. You know, in previous years, I would always go to the American Indian Science and Engineering, which is ASIS, the conference there, and talk to students all the time. We had a NASA booth there, and then occasionally we'd have John Harrington there. He was a big draw, so we'd have the kids come up and talk to him, and then we'd talk to the kids about, you know, what they want to do, because it's not only just being an astronaut. There's all kinds of things that NASA does. You know, we have lawyers, we have people that do maintenance work, facilities work, we have people that are engineers, we have people that are get into biology and chemistry and trying to discover life in the universe. And we have a lot of folks doing small satellites. And in fact, we got some of the summer students we have are native. And in fact, we have some from Navajo Technical University in Crown Point, New Mexico that come
what is that?
Yeah, that's neat. They come and do some work in the summers, engineering work, and help building small satellites. So they learn, you know, some of the manufacturing techniques and stuff. And so it's really neat. So we've got a relationship with them in that way. We have other native students that come and do aeronautics research and things like that. So it varies what they want to do. And so it's really good.
So when the students come here to I guess to NASA Ames,
right?
Do they live here?
That's right. We have some on-site dormitories, or if they get full, we try to arrange places where they can stay. But usually we prefer to have them on site, so you know, don't have to worry about paying rent or anything like that. So you know, or pay minimal rent, so they make it affordable for them to come and work and experience the summer.
I bet it's a big shock to come from the reservation out here to Silicon Valley.
Yes, it is.
And,
not
just a financial shock, but
yeah, just all the people in a different you're in a highly densely populated area, and all the traffic and everything. And so, you know, we have a employee group at Ames called our Native American Advisory Committee, and so we try to touch base with the Native students that come on board and have lunch with them, and you know, kind of make them feel welcome. And
so they serve as mentors?
Yeah, some of them are actually they mentor the students directly. So we have some researchers that bring some Native students in, and they work with them, and so it's really nice to make that connection.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about the school in New Mexico. Is this is it a high school or is it a college?
It's it was a 2-year college, and a couple of years back they became accredited as a 4-year university.
Oh my goodness!
So the first on the Navajo
wonderful.
Nation, Navajo Technical University, and it's in Crown Point, New Mexico. And in fact, I traveled with our center director at the time, and went to their grand opening ceremony where they had a ceremony for becoming a university. So it's very proud. And we've established a relationship where we bring these summer students on board to work with our engineering folks, and they actually get hands-on experience working on actual satellites and things. So it's really exciting.
That is wonderful. What's our student population, do you know?
Oh, we get about 900 to 1,000 summer students, and so you know, a small portion of that are Native students, probably you know, a dozen or 20 or so, depending on the year. So we try to make sure we get some of our Native young folks on board.
Wow, that's really fascinating.
Yeah. Do you have, when they come out here, do you have other activities they get involved in? Or are they just strictly there to hit the books?
No, we try to give them an experience because they may end up starting, to work in one area, but we have so many things that go on at Ames that we try to encourage them to talk to the other students, to go around, visit what the other students are doing, and we also have a summer colloquium series where we have presenters talk about different aspects of research that NASA is conducting, and so it exposes the students to, all the different things that are going on. We do biology, we look for life in space, we invent new materials, we invent new spacecraft, people design new web pages, we have computer programs and modeling and robotics and all this stuff that goes on that the students get into, and they help our researchers and scientists and engineers actually make things that actually go into space or missions like that. So it's really neat.
That is.
Yeah.
I wasn't even aware of, I guess, all the activities that go on at NASA what, Mountain View?
That's right. Yet, when you think of NASA, a lot of folks think, well, that's where they launch the rockets,
Exactly.
or that's that
Must be in
big place in
Florida
Houston
somewhere.
or Florida,
Houston. Yeah.
No, but we have NASA here, and we're known for our supercomputing capabilities. We're known for developing the heat shield materials that I talked about earlier. We're known for doing a lot of aeronautics research, both on airplane design as well as trying to help improve things like air traffic control, trying to modernize and handle more capacity, make the airspace safer, and so, and make, the routes more fuel efficient for the aircraft. If you save fuel here and there, you make flying cheaper. So, and we're getting into all that kind of research. We have folks that do biology experiments on the space station. We make little satellites that go up in space and do various scientific missions. We have a space probe out there right now called Kepler, and it's looking for planets around other stars, and it's finding thousands and thousands of planets, and what they want to do is try and identify those that are kind of the same size as the Earth or the same temperature range away from their star as the Earth. So that's a potential, possible life. We don't know. There may be life in our solar system, so that's why we go to Mars, or that's why we want to look at some of the moons out there of Jupiter and Saturn, and because there's a potential of water, life, and things like that out there, and so we're just looking for that. Yeah.
Well, you'll
Intelligent
have to
life.
get a native person out there first so they can put the flag down. Put the flag down. Now, you talked about the wind tunnels and everything.
Right.
I know you're not an astronaut, but have you ever gone in there or gone on a spaceship just to check it out?
Oh, we've gone in the wind tunnels because sometimes you have to check things out. When I worked in the wind tunnels, we make sure all the wiring was hooked up right and that what we were testing was properly installed. So we would do that. Going around to different parts of NASA, I've been able to visit other places, like Kennedy in Florida or Johnson in Houston, and that's where they run a lot of the missions or do a lot of the launches. So, in my recent history, I've been able to observe a couple of launches, and it's been very exciting to actually see, the rocket, the satellite, the payload, what we're developing, and we're testing, the next rocket that's going to send humans into space, and so, and beyond. We're trying to go to Mars and do all kinds of neat things out there. So.
Wow, that is so cool.
It is.
That is so cool. We'll be right back. You're watching Native Voice TV, and we're here with Michel.Liu learning about NASA. So one of the other things I was curious about, have you had any reason to or any relationship with the Native tribes in your role at NASA?
Actually, I have, and it was unexpected for me. This was a few years after we formed, like I mentioned earlier, our Native American Advisory Committee, and so the agency was trying to identify all those folks with Native backgrounds so we can kind of collaborate and work together and participate in recruiting fairs and things like that to bring more Natives on board. And so we established this contact, and we had a space mission out of Ames called the Lunar Prospector. And we got called because just before the launch, they put some human ashes on board of an a person who wanted to be an astronaut, Gene Shoemaker. He was a famous scientist and did a lot of help and planning of lunar missions by helping the astronauts understand what it is they'd be dealing with the craters and the rocks and so on. And so he unfortunately passed away, and as an honoring, they sent a piece of his cremated remains up on the spacecraft. And then that came out, and that caused a fluff with the Navajo Nation. They said we're desecrating the moon, and so what do we do? So that's an interesting thing you never expect. And
So how did the Navajo Nation contact NASA?
So they contacted our headquarters, and so our headquarters said, well, we have to do something, have meetings and discussions, and figure out how we're going to resolve this, because the mission of NASA is to benefit everybody. We need to share our information with everybody, bring students in, share our knowledge, and it's not our intent to insult or do anything to anybody, and so we had to work this. And so they got me involved with a team of folks that went out there and talked to spiritual elders on the reservation. We talked about what we could do to heal what happened, and through ceremony, and so you try to work your way through a cultural means of how to deal with certain things you never expected. And so I was involved in that, and it turned out through ceremony to do a healing of the moon. And so but from that point on, it made us more aware in NASA that when we conduct certain missions and activities, we have to understand, are there cultural impacts, not just native impacts, but other cultures around the world. Other people have beliefs and things that could get impacted by some of the things that we do, and we just need to be sensitive to that. And so it's helped our awareness, and it's helped us think about things as we plan our missions. So
that's interesting.
Yeah.
So how was the Navajo Nation on top of that? I mean, to know that was all going on, and to to get in front of that whole issue.
Yeah, I think the president at the time raised the issue, and so so it became in the news and stuff. And so NASA said, well, we need to discuss this and figure out how we work a solution. And so they brought me in to help be part of that group that figured something out. So it was interesting for me because it's just when I started reconnecting back to my heritage and my culture, and so I get to actually go back on the reservation and experience some of the cultural elements and what does one do to resolve a situation like this. And you understand and learn that there's a deep culture, there's ceremonies, there's ways to do things, and there's a lot of oral knowledge that exists in the various tribes that knows about the sky, the stars, and everything, and because it's a part of nature. And so, it's arrogant of us to think we know everything, because we don't. And so, in fact, things I learned when I was young, we've relearned them, or because of all the new discoveries that we've done with the latest probes and things we've sent out there. It's that the more we find out, the more we know, and the more we relearn things that we thought, gee, there's no water on the moon. All of a sudden now, yes, there is water on the moon. Oh, there's water on Mercury. There's water out there that we just weren't aware of. And if it's out there, maybe we can use that to keep maybe human bases on the moon or Mars or things like that sustain life for us. So, those are things that are in our future. And maybe, we'll have that native astronaut landing on Mars and making the discoveries. So we'll just see.
That is something.
Yeah.
Now your background is you're Navajo yourself.
That's right. Yeah. So I did not grow up on the reservation, and so my dad is full Navajo. And when I was about 5 years old, my mom and dad got divorced, and so I lost contact with my dad. And then it took about 30 years before I reestablished contact. And I reestablished contact about the same time I was getting involved at NASA with our Native American group and with the ACES organization. And so I was really getting into, both in a personal life as well as my work life, getting connected back to the Native community. And that's how I established contacts. There's the American Indian Alliance here and the Indian Health Center, and people we met here that were students back in the day at San Jose State and Stanford and Cal and so on. And so we've established a relationship with these young men and women that are now grown up and in the working life, and we see them all the time. And so it's fun to see people that we knew when they were younger, and we connected because of some of the things that we did with with ACES and student outreach and things like that.
So for the young student that's growing up now, what would you recommend? What course should they take if they want to go to work at NASA too?
Well, we try to focus on what's called STEM, the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, but there are other activities too. Like I was mentioning, a lot of things that we do at NASA, it varies. We have folks that are on our security force, so they're police type background. We have folks that do firefighting. We have folks that are lawyers. We have folks that get into purchasing and procurements. We have, engineers, the scientists, and people that do all kinds of things. Basically, what a city does, in a way we do the same at our NASA center, is that there's a structure that goes on. And so in my particular case, I'm the head of the safety department. So we, make sure that people are able to work and then go home safely and then come back the next day. And we want to make sure that when we send a mission out there, it works right. So, we try to help things work,
So should the kids get involved in STEM in high school to go into any of these fields? Would that be their best bet?
High school definitely, but we also want to inspire them younger to kind of keep up with their studies. So, we also visit, elementary schools as well, because, you got to start
at 5, right?
Yeah, I started at 5, but you got to start somewhere, and you got to, keep young kids interested in those kind of things, So you just never know where it's going to lead,
So you reconnected with your tribe,
Right.
And have you gone back to visit, and what has that experience been like?
Yeah, I go about once a year to visit my dad. He retired and now lives on the reservation, so he lives near Page, Arizona. So we go see him, and the first time I went back, this was like the mid-1990s, I met about 200 of my relatives I didn't know I had. and they said, we knew someday you'd come back and see us, so
good.
Here I am. And so that was a fun experience trying to research, how to reconnect with my relatives. And so, I spent...
Put a name tag on everybody.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So what was your name again? But then you learn to do things like eat mutton and mutton stew and all this stuff. So some of the native foods of the area, and so it's been a lot of fun, and I enjoy going back there. I have a connection. I just love, some people love the desert. I do too, and so it's really amazing.
Ah, that's great.
Yeah.
And then you're a great role model for your own family and, of course, all the Native people, because it's not like there's a lot of people in the science fields.
That's right. We want to make sure there's more people in science. We want to, represent and say, hey, if I can do it, you guys can do it too. Think about that. Expand what you could be. Because, I go to Native schools, I go to other schools too, and the young kids out there, they don't realize, oh, I could work at NASA, really? How's that? So, seeing people that work at NASA, it inspires them. So.
Need to do a lot of field trips,
Right.
and so kids can see what the potential is.
That's right. And when I go visit them, we kind of go through exercises. Well, let's say you had to live on the moon. What would you have to worry about? Well, you need air, you need water, you need food. Well, how do you think you'd do that? So it makes them think about, what they get into and what do they got to worry about? Gravity or being out in space, or being protected from the sun, from radiation, all this stuff that, you can get them thinking about, what's it like to be out there, and what do you have to do, and how do you get there, and is there a better way to get there? Can we maybe invent faster rockets or something that get us there more quickly? So, these are things that young kids have to solve, because, it takes us a while to go to Mars these days, and what if we got there in less time than...
And you want to make sure everything's perfect so they'll get there.
Oh yeah.
And safe.
That's right. You want to make sure that when we spend all the money on these missions, that the money, everything works and people are happy and all the neat things you discover.
So do you need?
Go ahead.
Do you need calculus to do?
Sometimes you do need calculus. Absolutely.
Okay.
Calculus, and sometimes you need physics, and sometimes you need chemistry, because we have people that are trying to make new materials, or they're trying to understand, what's the effect of this chemical in space, and so you're kind of discovering and inventing things as you go along. So.
Well, I guess so.
Yeah.
Won't be joining NASA soon.
We'll watch it on TV.
We'll watch it on TV.
We have folks that do TV work too, so you know.
Oh, see?
Yeah, that's what
Here we go.
We could do a broadcast from
All
space.
right.
That's
Yeah,
right.
we'll be
That's
the
right. We
first
need
natives
people
on-
to broadcast what it is we do, right? You know, hey, guess what happened in NASA today? Yeah, we got a great mission, you know.
That's right.
So-
So when they took the ashes up there,
Right.
did they leave the ashes there, or they just took them up on the
It
trip?
was on the spacecraft, and the spacecraft was orbiting the moon, studying it, and then eventually its fuel ran out, and so it crashed on the moon. So it's on the moon. So
Oh, gotcha.
yeah, so
Was that intentional? I mean, they
that's
knew that
the
was going to
end-
happen.
That was the end of the mission, but what was, you know, the concern was that we put the ashes on, and we should have thought about that, you know. But then you get into discussions, well, what's right and what's wrong, you know, and a certain culture say that's an honoring, another culture says, well, that's a desecration, and so, you know, how do you deal with that, you know? You have to be sensitive to all thoughts, all beliefs, and, you know, and you do what you can. And in this case, there was a healing ceremony, and so, you know, that's what was done.
That was great. It was
Yeah.
good that you were there to make
Right.
that connection back to the tribe.
Right, but it raised sensitivity and awareness at NASA, and so we think about these things more carefully now. So
That's good.
Wow.
Yeah.
Going forward now, they will
Yeah.
have that awareness. So
That's
that's
right.
wonderful.
that's right.
Yes, and I hope we get a lot more youth involved in the sciences and
Right.
working with you at NASA.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Yeah, so
Yeah.
come on board, and we'd love to have you and show you what we do. So,
All righty.
yeah.
Well, thank you for being here. It's a pleasure to see you again and
Yeah.
have you on the show after all these years.
Well, thank you for
Yeah.
having me back. Thank you.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Thank you for joining us. Like us on Facebook, and we'll see you next week on Native Voice TV.
Indigenous soul, indigenous soul.